Since the new Clipper and Lunar Tourism Soyuz will be launched atop the same rockets they had in 1963, it seems unlikely that they will be carrying the required 5-meter material shield that Gene Parker proposes. Russia's chances of genuinely reaching the moon seem pretty slim. In spite of these citations, Jay Winderley claims on his website that
no conspiracy theorist yet has been able to substantiate the claim that the Russians believed thick shielding would be necessary in order to walk on the moon.
Other propagandists have argued, why didn't the Russians fake their own manned moon flight? Who's to say they wouldn't have tried? On page 173 of his book, The Last Man on the Moon, Gene Cernan of Apollos 10 and 17 had this to say.
Zone 5 carried another unmanned Soyuz spacecraft around the far side of the moon, and the voice of a cosmonaut was heard sending back computer readings. It was only a tape recording, but it had shocked the hell out of us.
Now, suppose it was never officially revealed that the voice came from a tapes recorder, and the Russians hand-picked a false hero from their cosmonaut corps for the world to worship. There is another interesting factor to the old Soviet moon program. As we already established, the USSR had constructed their own version of the Saturn V, the N1. Understandably, the designing, developing, and construction of the Soviet and American moon rockets involved the efforts of thousands of scientists and engineers. And yet, the N1 itself was a well-kept secret in the Soviet Union for 30 years.
Top-secret film footage, only recently seen in the West, now confirms the scale of the Russian effort. The Soviets had constructed a massive new launch complex at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, 1,500 miles southeast of Moscow. Inside the main building, a lunar lander was under development. The Soviets, too, were planning a lunar orbit rendezvous approach to the moon. And their rocket, known as the N1, boasted 30 engines in the first stage alone, and stood 35 stories high.
They had a huge rocket, size of the Saturn, with many more engines on it than the Saturn, which they were planning to go to the moon with.
The Soviets began testing the N1 under conditions of utmost secrecy. No one outside a tiny Soviet elite ever knew of these launches.
Not only were the miserable N1 failures kept under wraps, the Soviet Union officially denied that they were even trying to get to the moon. The existence of their entire moon program was denied. So elaborate was this cover-up that Encyclopedia Astronautica described it as the real moon landing hoax. The internet is alive with websites detailing Apollo moon landing conspiracy theories. There is almost nothing on the real moon landing conspiracy, that of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had two secret projects designed to win the moon race. The L1 project would send a Soviet crew around the moon before the Americans, using a stripped-down Soyuz spacecraft launched by a Proton rocket. The L3 project would beat the American Apollo program to the lunar surface. The Soviets lost both races. In the case of being the first to send a man around the moon, that loss was measured in days or weeks. After the loss, they perpetrated a hoax. They claimed they had never been in the race to begin with. The Soviet manned lunar programs were only made public after the fall of the Soviet Union. It is universally known that the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. In June of 1961, Nikita Khrushchev had given the go-ahead for a manned circumlunar flight by the Soviet Union. The Russians had succeeded in covering up a space program that involved thousands and thousands of people for 30 years. And not just any space program, a massive space program on the same scale as its American counterpart, Apollo. They had even managed to smuggle their LK lander into orbit 3 times and fly 3 unmanned tests of their lunar module. The Soviets never revealed what it was until the third LK re-entered the atmosphere over Australia.
There were probably 250,000 people who were directly involved in the Apollo program, and another 500,000 people beyond that. 750,000 people can't keep a secret like that. That's just not going to happen.
Taking the moon landing is easy. You need dirt, wardrobe, a soundstage, a lot of black paint, some stupid suits. The hard part is shutting people up. It's been 36 years. You'd think that technicians and prop people, camera people, directors, everyone who works at NASA and the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, and all the nice folks at Cape Canaveral in Florida, plus members of the U.S. Congress and the White House all shut up about this amazing cover-up for all that time. The government couldn't even fucking cover up a break into a psychiatrist's office in a fucking cheesy hotel. Watergate is the answer to all this shit. If they couldn't cover that up, they fucking can't do anything.
I don't know 2 Americans who have a fantastic secret without one of them blurting it out to the press. Can you imagine thousands of people able to keep this secret?
The Russians managed to cover it up no problem. And yet, the propagandists would have you believe that the Americans could never have been able to cover up a conspiracy behind their own moon program, one equivalent to what we now know as the real moon landing hoax.